weekend during the summer to patrol and keep our neighborhoods safe. This past weekend was no exception. Commander Ernest Cato of the 15th District was a half a block away from the shooting on Central Park Avenue as he joined his officers on foot patrol and conducted investigatory stops. Commander Daniel Shea was also on scene immediately after a double shooting in the 18th District in the early morning hours, helping his officers and detectives investigate the crime scene. Now, I know I can speak for everyone at CPD when I say that we take these shootings seriously, and there's a heightened sense of urgency and care when it comes to gun violence in this city. We're going to continue to do everything in our power to prevent and respond to violence, but really, we can't do this without the support of the communities or a unified criminal justice system that keeps our gun offenders out of our neighborhoods. I'm joined here today by three of the men who were on the front lines over this past weekend to talk about some of the conflicts and challenges in their particular areas. Deputy Chief Al Nagoti is responsible for the northern portion of our city, and he's Area North Deputy Chief. Deputy Chief Jose Tirado is responsible for the downtown and central business districts, as well as some outlying districts. He's the Deputy Chief of Area Central. And Deputy Chief Elgin Holt is responsible for the south side of the city, and he's the Area South Deputy Chief. And now I'd like to call up Deputy Chief Al Nagoti to give some comments.
Thank you, Superintendent. As Deputy Chief Area North, I'm responsible for the 9 districts that cover the northern third of the city, including 2 of the west side districts that saw an unacceptable level of violence, Austin, the 15th District, and Harrison, the 11th District. To reiterate what the Superintendent said, I can tell you that weekends like this, all our officers take this very personal. Despite a downward trend in the major index categories for the west side, we experienced some formidable challenges this weekend with gang factions settling conflicts with gun violence. As we approach the summer months, we are experiencing an increase in shootings and gun-related offenses that we typically see as the weather gets warmer and comes upon us. We're still combing through the victim profiles from the weekend, but it appears that our incidents on the west side were not random, but rather can be tracked to current gang conflicts in the areas and tensions relative to the open-air drug market that's occurring on the west side. As a result, my officers responded swiftly by saturating the neighborhoods with a focus on preventing the retaliation and engaging gun and gang offenders on the street. I would like to acknowledge the tremendous work that the men and women working in Area North do every day, and the leadership in these districts that the leadership teams provide. I am most proud of the relationships that each commander in the 9 Northside districts have established with residents, community groups, and our faith-based organizations. The community remains the key in identifying and prioritizing the problems on each of their respective areas. Chicago police cannot keep the communities we patrol safe on our own. We certainly need everybody's help. So please, if you see something, we need you to get involved. We need you to call the police. We need you to work with our police officers on a daily basis. We have those relationships. That's being done. And again, I'm very proud that we're identifying the areas that we need to focus on and directing our resources to those areas. I'd like to now present Commander Tirado Deputy Chief Tirado from Area Central. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Nagoti. I'm Deputy Chief Jose Tirado, and I'm responsible for the central quadrant of our city, including the downtown area, central business district, and the districts along the lakefront. The violence in Area Central mainly centered in the 1st and 18th District. I was out there the entire weekend with nearly my entire command staff. And the command staff is responding to we're responding to all of these jobs. We're on scene. Our commanders are engaged. I can tell you at this stage, many of the conflicts we see this weekend have a narcotics and gang component. Our teams are busy conducting analysis right now and identifying those driving the violence and implemented targets to ensure that we put enforcement in those areas. We have ordered increased bicycle patrols in neighborhoods in an effort to stem the violence. Bike teams will also step up patrols along lakefronts and dedicated tactical saturation teams have been sent out to stabilize areas of retaliation. We will also be conducting strategic visibility and traffic enforcement efforts on major thoroughfares, including Lakeshore Drive, the Straight Street Corridor, Michigan Avenue, and North Avenue, to keep these high-traffic areas safe. The commanders, captains, lieutenants, and sergeants are leading their troops in the field and are very committed to deterring criminal activity and holding people accountable. I know this for a fact because I've seen them myself. This entire weekend, last weekend, all our command staff is involved. Our officers are all involved. While we may continue to have periodic challenges like this weekend, we will use every resource and disposable resources to continue driving down violence, as we've been doing it for over the last 2 years. I want to take a minute to thank all the officers that continue to work hard, the command staff, which I'm very proud of, for Area Central. We are engaged, we're involved, and we're on the street. Thank you. I'd like to now introduce Deputy Chief Elgin Hope.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Jose Tirado. Thank you and good morning. I am Elgin Hope, Deputy Chief of Area South. That includes the 4th, 5th, 6th, and the 22nd districts on the south side, on the city's south side. I am here to briefly summarize our efforts over the weekend. I want to encourage everyone to enjoy themselves responsibly in the summer months. Chicago comes to life in the summer with festivals, barbecues, and family activities in the park. Unfortunately, many of the south side districts have been plagued with violence related to gun gangs and drugs for too long. And this weekend brought with it more of the same. That said, Area South experienced 12 shooting incidents, including 2 murders over this weekend. Now, any number above 0 is unacceptable when we refer to violent crime in the city. While the motives for each of these incidents is not clear, gang violence remains at the heart of the majority of our most serious calls for service. Several of these shootings were also initiated from disputes among acquaintances. Area South Uniform District personnel, along with Area South gang enforcement and saturation and gun units, worked hard to make a difference in some of the most challenging neighborhoods. In an effort to curb gang violence, we recovered a total of 37 firearms this weekend, which shows proactive policing is very active, and have recovered over 1,350 firearms year-to-date on the city's south side. Curbing active gang conflicts and retaliatory violence is one of the pieces of the enforcement puzzle being utilized to combat public violence. Area South District Mission Saturation Gun and Gang Enforcement teams are strategically deployed in the most problematic areas, the active gang conflict, the historical conflicts that go on. In addition, several on-duty overtime initiatives, such as traffic, gang enforcement, and technology-based missions utilizing our strategic decision support centers were conducted by Area South districts. Going forward, large unauthorized gatherings will continue to be the target and dispersed in order to maintain order and provide safety for the South Side residents of Chicago. Furthermore, Area South districts are utilizing community engagement components such as bicycle teams in certain districts to patrol neighborhoods, parks, and conduct positive community interactions and with residents. District and Area South community policing officers, along with faith-based and community organizations, will target at-risk youth, individuals, and provide outreach programs. Examples of these programs include this past weekend the Swiss basketball tournament at Ogden Park in the 7th District, and the upcoming Peace Rally scheduled on the 7th of June at Gately Stadium in the 5th District. We are in this together and cannot do it alone. In closing, I would like to remind everyone, if you see something, say something. Contact the police with information, calling 911, by submitting a tip with your phones at cpdtip.com. And thank you.
Okay, we'll take any questions if you have any.
Superintendent, obviously the police cannot predict human behavior. It's hard to prevent somebody from actually pulling the trigger. But just because this is, a police press conference, just based on the sheer number of people shot this weekend, is there anything about the police strategies that could have been improved? Were the strategies working this weekend? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I tell you, Jeremy, I think what this shows is just the proliferation of guns that we have on the streets of Chicago. When you think about these incidents we had over the weekend, in many of them, police were within blocks. Commander Cato was a half a block away from a shooting. But that just shows you how emboldened some of these individuals are. And it's ridiculous that we just cannot get this right in terms of holding people accountable and finding alternatives for certain individuals to do. Because I'll tell you this, again, we know who a lot of these people are. And how do we know that? Because we keep arresting them over and over and over and over and over again. And it's just a vicious cycle. So until we hold violent offenders accountable the way that they should be, we're going to continue to see this. Now, as far as CPD's strategies, look, we have one of the professions that require our constant attention. These people that you see up here with me today, from Memorial Day to today, probably haven't had a day off. So if that doesn't give you the sense that they're committed to what we do, I don't know what will. So I think that we can always look at ways that we can do different things and improve in different areas. But at the end of the day, until we hold these gun offenders accountable, until we stop giving them the sense that they can do this with impunity, then we're going to continue to have these press conferences.
Superintendent, you had said early on, though, that when things started happening on Friday early, then you started mobilizing in certain areas to make sure there wasn't retaliation and those kind of things.
Right.
Is there a way to get ahead of that so that you're not waiting for that to happen, so then in going to it?
So I'll share this with you. Because of the constant analysis that we do, and we look at our crime picture daily, if not hourly. So the retaliations, to get in front of those, the first shooting, the SDSCs help us do that in many instances. Like I can tell you this, we have done extensive analysis of this city. And what we know is we have challenging districts. Then we break those districts down into the challenging beats, okay? From there, we make our deployments. Over the Memorial Day weekend, we did that same thing. And I think it was 80% of the shootings that we had over that weekend didn't happen in those areas that we thought they would because we had put our deployments there. So that shows that that does work. Until we get to a point that we give these gun offenders the sense that they'll be held accountable, like it's ridiculous to me that we know that when we arrest these gun offenders, half of them, and I want you to think about this for a moment, and I welcome you all to look into this. Half of them get out and are back on the street in a week or less. So, because we arrest them multiple times, it shows CPD's doing what they're supposed to do. We recovered 92 weapons over this weekend. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So until we get an all hands on deck support, then we're going to continue this.
When you're talking about holding them accountable and people showing back up on the streets, I assume you're referencing the number of people being released on I-bonds?
Yeah, I mean,
And is there a specific ask you're asking for the county, from the county?
if we keep arresting them multiple times, then where do we need help from? It's not the police officers aren't arresting them, because they are. It's not that the police officers aren't arresting them with weapons, because they are. We have to get better, not just in Chicago, but all over this country. We have to get better at holding people with illegal weapons accountable.
Can you clarify, though, what you mean by that? Is this a reference to people getting released on bond? Is this a reference to there not being enough prosecutions, winning cases? Or?
I think we have to look at the bond. But I'm going to give that to you all for some homework. Look into it and tell me what you find. Tell me what you find.
What has the response been from the public so far in terms of just, have they been talking to you guys? Have they been helping you out at all? What's that like?
You know, I tell you this, the one thing that you can never measure, Ryan, is the amount of crime we prevent. You just can't measure that. And what I can say to you, in many of these challenging areas, a lot of those community members are talking to us because the majority of people in those areas are good people. You know, they don't want to see the crime like that in their areas. You know, they want their children to be able to go out and play just like everybody else does. So I think we built some relationships where they were fractured before, but yeah, we still have more work to do.
Superintendent, there were 10 homicides. Have any arrests been made in any of those? And if not, does that suggest that people aren't coming forward like you hoped?
No, so out of the homicides, 2 of them were domestic-related stabbings, and we have alerts out for those individuals that we think are responsible. And then some of the other shootings, we have very good leads that I think we'll be bringing those individuals in soon.
But are you getting people coming forward from the public helping you out on the more serious?
Yes, yes.
When you mentioned spillover into the downtown areas, is that a result of the targeted response you have in the neighborhoods?
No, that's a result of individuals being targeted. So, you know, you heard us say that a lot of this was gang-related. Those shootings in the downtown area, we know that the individuals shot were targeted. So they come from other areas in the city, and they just happened to be down there when they were shot.
How do you look at next weekend?
Say again?
What do you do for next weekend? How do you prepare?
Well, we continue to do what we're doing. I think that, you know, as I said, our crime picture changes daily, if not hourly. So we continue to look at the analysis, the data, and then you never can take away the human intel factor. That's how these commanders and deputy chiefs do a lot of their deployments, based on human intel. You know, the SDSCs are very good in helping us determine that, but you still have to utilize your human intel, and you make your deployments based on both of those things.
Superintendent, just to clarify, of the 52 shot this past weekend, how many have been arrested? You know?
How many arrests? We have to get that to you.
Okay.
Last question, guys.
In Streeterville, they said it took 20 minutes for police to arrive on the scene overnight, Friday to Saturday, when the 4 people were shot. The alderman said you guys were just stretched too thin. Patrols were at the 22 other shooting incidents across the city. It's the first warm weekend. What are we going to do the rest of the summer?
Now, you know, I'd have to look into that to see if that's actually the case. Because remember, a lot of times when we respond to those incidents, that's a demerit. A lot of times when we respond to those incidents, you won't see the marked cars initially, but there will be plainclothes units out there oftentimes. You know, but we just keep doing what we do. You know, and as I've said before, you know, this has to be an all-hands-on-deck effort. The police department, I remember when I came on in 1988, we just really concentrated on the enforcement part. Now the police departments all over the country are tasked with solving it, you know, with offering programs, all types of things. That's not really what law enforcement does. You know, so we have to have our other city agencies pitch in, our communities pitch in, our business communities, our partners. Everybody has to pitch in to stem the tide of this violence in this city.
Did you feel like there was a response time problem at all this weekend?
No.
Did you have extra patrols? Did you have extra patrols around like you did Memorial Day weekend, like any day off cancellations or anything?
Not to that extent. We always, you know, these deputy chiefs have the ability to be very flexible. And if we think there's going to be an uptick somewhere, then we will cancel days off. You know, it just depends. You know, we're constantly looking at it. And if that's what it provides for, then we do that. You know, I told you before, you can't put a price on public safety. So if we need to do that, then we will certainly utilize that. Okay?
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I think pretty much you've seen.
Yeah, 52, 52 shootings, 10 murders.
Your research. You think you started
Thanks, brother.